Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us, and we are very honored to have him with us, we have Mitch Coven. He is the CEO and formulator for Vitality Works Pure Herbal Extracts, speaking on the topic of herbal allies for immunity, empowering your body's defense with natural remedies. Thank you so much, Mitch, for joining us.
Oh, thanks. Happy to be here and talk all things herbal on immunity. It's great.
And what a great time transitioning into fall and cold season.
Yep. Yeah, no, this is the time to be preparing, especially for those who have a lot of immune issues, to boost up their system before they get acute. And that's some of the things that we're going to talk about. So I'm looking forward to differentiating different approaches. Yep. Yep. So yeah, let me know if you want me to just take off and go from here or whatever you'd like.
Oh, yes, you have the live stream floor.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I'm Mitch Coven. As Elizabeth mentioned, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I did herbal clinical practice for 17 years. Saw patients in the clinic with 5 other practitioners that we brought in. I've compounded herbal items for clinicians for a long time, and now we make them that go into stores and over the market for lots of folks that are clinically based. So I can offer the benefit of not only my studies, but things I've seen work with people over 41 years. This is my 41st year making herbal things and putting them out all across the world. Right now we're producing, anywhere between 50 and 100,000 bottles of things a day. They go all over the world, and we're happy to be working with Marlene's that carry a lot of these products. What we're going to talk about today are, how herbs work and what they're for, which are 2 different things. And of all the different things we make herbal products for, immunity has the most number of products because there's so many variations on a theme, as opposed to things for anxiety, stress, sleep, urinary tract, cleansing, whatever. There's lots of products, but there are more things we understand that work for the immune system than almost anywhere. And so I'll be talking about how to differentiate what to use and when, and what form to take them in. There's liquids, there's capsules, there's formulas, there's single herbs, and how much to take. Even though most people have heard of something for the immune system in the herbal supplement world, I think it's poorly understood really about what to take when and how much. So I'm going to talk about that because it'll increase the chance that you'll have success by understanding this a bit more. So just to back up a little bit, in approaching herbal medicine, we always try to create what's called system homeostasis. And we look at every system of the body, and if it's operating optimally, we tend not to break down and get illnesses, diseases, sicknesses, and so on. And we know certain things in our vernacular. So like if someone says, I'm having trouble with my blood sugar, I say, well, is it hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic? Or your thyroid, am I hypothyroid, which is low thyroid, or hyperthyroid? And so we kind of understand this in some systems, like digestively, do you produce too many digestive enzymes and you need Tums Rolaids because you're ulcerative? Or do I not produce enough digestive enzymes and everything just sits there and I get sluggish and constipated and things don't go through and I can't eat all these different foods? But we don't talk about that is in terms of the immune system, what that looks like. So the immune system, when it's operating optimally, is where optimal health is, obviously. If it becomes excessive in what it's doing, those tend to be autoimmune disorders, where the immune system is so active, it's attacking you. And they tend to be things, we're not going to talk about that today, by the way. It's a different topic. But those are inflammatory conditions that respond to corticosteroids and lead to autoimmune disorders like psoriasis, eczema, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, myasthenia gravis, and where your immune system is, lupus eating itself up. Most people, when they're working on their immune system, are dealing with immune deficiency. And it doesn't have to be a big disease, but it could just be where your immune system isn't responding to the buggers that are coming around and you tend to get stuff, whether it's a cold and flu or it's COVID or, it's so immune deficient, you have a disease like HIV. So we're going to be talking about immune deficiency, like what to take to boost your immune system. And we're going to differentiate what to take to boost yourself up when you're not sick versus what to take when you are sick, because they're very different things and people don't talk about that. And if you understand that better, you'll have a lot more success. So again, we're going to be talking about things to boost your immune system up overall. So I just wanted to set that groundwork, and we do know how these herbs work. And we do know what they do when you take them. And so I'll be talking about some of that. So to dive in a little bit, let's first talk about what to take to boost your immune system for the preventative mode. What do you take now? Because historically, every Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, whatever rolls around, you get sick. And some people might think, well, I don't have much trouble. I only get sick once a year or twice a year. You're not supposed to get sick once or twice a year. You can do things to not get sick once or twice a year. And getting a cold or flu, typically that virus runs a course of 3 days. And some people say, well, I get sick and then I have symptoms for 2 weeks. I get a little bit better, it comes back. I have the sniffles on and off all winter long. And that is immune deficiency. You're supposed to get rid of that stuff and not have those symptoms. So we're going to talk about how to boost is the first way, just to start talking about immune differentiation. So this is where we start talking about things like echinacea. People don't understand, again, I keep talking about people understand it. So let's talk about what echinacea does. What echinacea does is it stimulates phagocytosis of a certain type of white blood cell called a neutrophil. And these are white blood cells that circulate in our bloodstream. And phagocytosis is the munching, kind of like think of Pac-Man and it's gobbling up little dots. And white blood cells go around gobbling stuff up. And we have white blood cells all over our bodies. Some only live in certain organs like your liver or your lungs and your urinary tract. But the first line of defense are these white neutrophils that circulate in your bloodstream. And a lot of people's white blood cells get kind of lethargic because they're under a lot of stress. They maybe done a lot of immunosuppressive things in the past, like corticosteroids, like cortisone and prednisone, or NSAIDs, which are Advil. And when we take those things to tell our immune system to slow down, and even aspirin, it tells your immune system to kind of like stop doing what it naturally does. And over time, in the lifetime of well-meaning intent and taking things to get better, maybe we didn't know any better, is that our immune system becomes less reactive to little buggers that are always around and more abundantly in the change of season and when cold flus come around. And for those who work in the public domain and people are coming in, teachers, hospitals, people work in stores, the public's coming in and you're around a lot of things, especially seasonally, that you tend to get things more readily than others. And it's interesting to note, even people like say, they got sick, well, when did you get sick? Well, I was really stressed out. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I wasn't eating well. There's a lot going on in my life. And that's when I got sick. And that is how your immune system works, because when you're under a lot of stress, your immune system functionality, like the phagocytosis of those neutrophils, tend to become turned down. So what echinacea does, when you take echinacea, it tells those white blood cells to get more active. It's like, think of like giving them caffeine, which is not caffeine, but it turns up the dial so that there's stuff coming in that you inhale, you eat, they're coming in through your nose, your mouth, your eyes, your ears, and your body is naturally fighting those things off. And when you can't fight them off enough, you go into deeper immune reactions where you start to produce more mucus or maybe temperature and fever, and your lymph starts to kick in, you get achy in your neck. And that means you missed it in the first place. So where echinacea is heroic is beforehand when you're sick. So echinacea really isn't indicated once you are sick. So a lot of people say, I'm sick now, I'm going to take echinacea. You missed it. It doesn't work with that part of your immune system for the most part. You got to take it beforehand. So it was, and then there, if some of you may remember around the year 2000, 2002, then that NIH did a study on echinacea. And they did a study to see if it decreased the length and intensity of a cold and flu. And all of a sudden, USA Today, New York Times pick up all this publication, the published results with it. NIH, National Institute of Health, your tax dollars at work, said echinacea doesn't work for active colds and flus. Well, we already knew that. Then when you read the research paper, it said, oh, by the way, families that took echinacea that weren't sick didn't get sick as often. But they didn't publish that. Well, that's what it was for. The whole study was bent in the wrong direction in the first place. They proved how you do use it correctly, but USA Today and so many others published saying echinacea doesn't really work. And a lot of people stopped taking echinacea. So echinacea would be good for, let's say, back to school, right? Going into the petri dish of lots of families and different buggers. You take it then, or maybe you're traveling. You're going to places that have different buggers, other countries, and you want to boost your immune system because you're on airplanes, you're in hotels, you're eating things you're not used to, and you don't want to get sick. That's where you take echinacea. Or maybe you say, I was on antibiotics last year once. I had someone come to the clinic that was on antibiotics on average 6 to 8 times a year, and their immune system was shot. And so we got them on a protocol, and which included a lot of echinacea. And that next winter, they didn't need antibiotics. They didn't get sick. It's so much easier to turn things around before they happen. And it's easier to stay well than to wait till things break down where you're more miserable. And, it's harder to turn around when you're acute. So I want to flush that out. And with echinacea, the best way to take echinacea is in a liquid extract that's been extracted first with alcohol. So I like to say just because you put something in your mouth doesn't mean it went in you. So once you put something in your mouth, you have to digest it, and then you have to assimilate, the things that you're after, even if it's foods. So echinacea is also poorly water soluble. So even taking echinacea and steeping bags of echinacea in water in a hot tea, it's not water soluble. Parts of it are water soluble, but not all of it. So it has to go through a process with alcohol and extraction phase to get the actives out of the connective tissue of the plant. So that's what we do with our liquid echinacea that we put out there. And when you taste it, it makes your mouth tingle. And that's because the actives create an organoleptic sensation, which are the alkaloids that when you take tea, you don't get that. Because the actives didn't come out in the water. You actually threw them away in the tea bag when you took the tea bag out because they didn't come out. So echinacea in the liquid form is the best way to take it. Now, I commonly like to pair that up. So just giving echinacea to your kids, taking it now because you don't want to get sick in a while, like I'm saying, like around Christmas, New Year's, when more stuff is going around, echinacea doesn't stimulate enough right now because you are on the edge today. You got to take it for a month or two to retrain those cells to be more reactive to everything that's coming in. So maybe if you're around COVID loads, you can fight off more counts of COVID before you go into the secondary reaction and those protein spikes are dominating and you're going into full-blown COVID. Because we've all been around it. Why did some people get sick and not some others? Some of it has to do with the robustness of your immune system. So echinacea can help keep you strong that way. And again, it works with the type of white blood cells that are circulating in your blood. Now, your immune system does hundreds of things, and echinacea doesn't do everything. So commonly, I like to pair it up in the boosting preventative phase with another herb called astragalus. Astragalus is a Chinese herb. We buy it in whole form. All the herbs we buy pretty much are in whole form, so we can identify them. So some people say, oh, it's from China. I'm skeptical. Well, there's good and bad quality in every country and in every item. And it's our job is to make sure it's 100% that thing, harvested correctly, great quality and potency. So we buy whole echinacea roots and whole astragalus roots. Astragalus works in your lymph, and echinacea doesn't do that. So your lymph also is part of your immune fighting system that produces natural killer cells, T cells, and identifies what cells do I need to make because I'm inhaling and things are getting in me. I need to make specialized cells to go get rid of this stuff so I don't go into a fever, so I don't go into producing all this mucus to try to expectorate and have your body do all these other things which are much more uncomfortable. So astragalus is really key for the boosting of the immune system, to the point where there's all kinds of research on astragalus that show astragalus will even help people going under chemotherapy. It doesn't affect cancer, but a lot of people in chemotherapy, the problem with chemotherapies is also wiping out your healthy immune cells to the point where you can get pneumonia and get all these opportunistic infections. That people who take astragalus under chemotherapy tend not to get those secondary symptoms of what, that where you can get pneumonia and other viruses that can kill you, quite frankly, instead of the cancer. So astragalus can keep your immune system robust even under chemotherapy. But the point here being now for just average us, everybody else, when you combine echinacea and astragalus, they're kind of like the dynamic duo of immune boosters that one can take for long periods of time to reboost your immune system. Astragalus can be taken in almost any form and it's effective. So we make it in liquids and make it in capsules. My favorite way in the immune boosting phase to do and take things is to take them together. We make a formula called ImmunoWellRx. And the ImmunoWellRx takes echinacea, takes astragalus. We add some medicinal mushrooms like shiitake and maitake. And we add a few other herbs which kind of stimulate other types of immune cells all together. And that formulation called ImmunoWellRx has been my go-to for the last 3-4 years. As soon as COVID started moving around, we saw in February of 2020, I started sending cases of ImmunoWellRx to family members, my kids. I've been taking it on my loved ones here at the company. We gave bottles to everybody. It's the kind of thing, it's like, okay, everyone needs to boost immune function. And I've been taking it since day one of awareness of COVID. I didn't get COVID. Does that mean it worked or no? I wouldn't have gotten it anyways? You can't answer that. But for those folks who I've been giving ImmunoWellRx to, there's been much less frequency of any kind of flu and any kind of immune breakdown. Even for folks who just normally are okay, when you have to do something a little bit extra because we're in unusual times, and COVID is going to be seasonal now. It's kind of become just one more of the hundreds of viruses that started once upon a time in the past and circulate forever. They just become less lethal, but they're still extremely uncomfortable in one of the many varieties and species of, of the viruses that can tend to go around. So our best way to fight all that is like boost our own immune system so we can handle more and not break down. So ImmunoWellRx is a great combination of echinacea and astragalus to boost in the preventative phase. And it can be taken long-term. Some people may have heard that you can't take echinacea long-term. That was based on one herbalist that I know who misinterpreted the study in the 1960s. It said when you first take echinacea, you see a huge immune spike in phagocytosis and the production of more white blood cells. And then it drops off after day 2 and 3, but it never goes below your baseline. You still stay stimulated. And this person misinterpreted the study and wrote about it. And this is one of the situations where myth became what people think is fact. It's not true. echinacea is meant to be taken long-term to boost immune function for those who are chronically fighting off almost anything. So that's where it works best, safe for kids long-term, elderly, anybody in the family. I don't know contraindications for echinacea, and it still works. It's funny, even in the industry, everyone's trying to say, what's new? Give me something new and different. The things that have been working for decades and sometimes hundreds of years still work. And we haven't discovered new things that are better. So, I take one Immuno-LRX cap every day. If you have astragalus or just echinacea, take one a day, and I want to get through till the spring because, the incidences of those buggers around have only grown. Now, other things to consider to maybe boost and take with it that are good to boost you, but not necessarily are the things to take when you're acute. D3, 5,000 IU a day. And just take your D3. It's good for so many things, for bone density and for depression, for the, especially when there's less sun around. So many of us are not outside enough without sunscreen, where we can synthesize our own D3, which is a type of really cholesterol more than a vitamin, but that happens when your sun is allowed to hit your skin. But all of us cover up, we put on sunscreens, we're inside too much. A lot of people test for D3 deficiency. D3 is very important to keep your immune system strong. That's another thing here at the company we give out to everybody. I load up everybody I know and love that wants to take it. It's inexpensive, it's easy. Please take D3. It's another easy way to go. So the topic now that we're talking about are, what do you take to boost your immune system before you're acute, so maybe you don't get acute? Couple other things to talk about in that bucket. When are mushrooms? It's exploding in popularity right now. You can see people taking it instead of coffee, and people are making tons of claims. And whether it's mycelia or fruiting body, it all works. There are certain medicinal mushrooms like shiitake and maitake that are more geared toward immune function. Some are more for cognitive function, and they do other things like, lion's mane, and there's cordyceps for energy. But they all have a group of compounds called beta-glucans, which are a type of polysaccharide, and they will boost immune function a little bit all the time. And so they're good things to eat more shiitake mushrooms in your diet and maitake. When you see mushrooms on the menu, order them. But we make those compounds as well. And those are 2 more ingredients in our Immuno-LRX. But we have them in lots of different types of, singly and in other mushroom type formulations. But mushrooms in general will gently stimulate more activity in your immune system, especially in the lymph, which is overlooked commonly. So I'm a huge fan for people and an advocate, to take medicinal mushrooms. One other category in general for boosting immune function are adaptogens, and for the immune system, things like ashwagandha. And what they do, there's ashwagandha, there's some ginsengs, rhodiola, there's a bunch of them out there, schizandra, eleuthero. Ashwagandha is like a rock and roll star because it does so many things. But when you're under a lot of stress, and there have been thousands of studies around this, mainly coming out of Russia, some out of Europe, that show that when you're under a lot of stress, we secrete stress hormones, adrenocorticotropic hormone, thyroid hormone, cortisol, and adrenaline, that when you're chronically under stress, your immune system tends to go deficient and you get sick more often. And a lot of people have that experience of being wiped out emotionally from work, trauma, from personal stuff. That's when they got sick. So taking some adaptogens in your diet on a regular basis is going to help, and as a supplement, I should say. And so if you're including those, not only will increase your body's ability to adapt to stress, which could affect how you do hormones for your cycle, or for men with testosterone, and how they affect your digestive enzymes, they affect your immunity, they help you sleep better because you can modulate stress and come out of adrenaline push. They're good for so many things. They do affect immunity directly. So It's another category that are immune boosters to add maybe in a cocktail of things that you need to take. Echinacea astragalus are the most direct, followed by D3 in mushrooms, and after that, maybe some adaptogens, but I'd be remiss not to cover those. And again, adaptogens like ashwagandha, they work in your pituitary and hypothalamus, and how you secrete stress hormones, which tell your immune system, they affect your immune system profoundly. So if you're someone that says, gosh, I always get sick under stress, I would be taking ashwagandha and other adaptogens on a regular basis. Okay. Now let's talk about and morph a little bit into what kinds of things you take once you missed all of that and you're sick. You tend to take the echinaceas and the immunoallergens and put them on the side when you're acute. And now you got to deal with something stronger to deal with your lungs and your respiratory tract or your throat. So this is where I got to talk about a few things. Probably the most popular and common things that people are taking is oregano oil. Oregano oil is a steam distilled process using oregano that concentrates an active phenolic compound in it called carvacrol. And you can do research on the active compound called carvacrol, and you'll see amazing studies. It doesn't really boost your immune system to go get the stuff. It kills stuff. So this is when you need to kill stuff now. I don't recommend taking oregano oil in general, just to boost, because that's not what it's for. Oregano oil you take because, okay, my throat hurts now, I'm producing more mucus, it's discolored, I'm feeling achy, I'm starting to have some temperature, and oregano oil is probably the strongest natural compound to kill E. coli, staph, salmonella. It kills Candida albicans for yeast infections. It kills all kinds of mold. It kills all kinds of viruses. It kills parasites. It's a broad spectrum antimicrobial, antiviral, antifungal material that doesn't work in just oregano on your pizza. You got to get some quantity. And this would be the oregano oil that is carried at the store and is around, and it's super pungent, spicy. So the strongest way to take it is the dropper bottle, where 4 drops, just 4 drops is a therapeutic dose. It's really intense tasting, so some people don't like that, which is why we also put it into a 2-piece hard veggie cap so that you can take it and bypass tasting it. And it's easier for people to take, especially those that are taste sensitive. And so oregano oil will kill stuff now. So oregano oil is good once you're past the uh-oh stage where I'm around a lot of stuff and I'm taking Echinacea astragalus, but I have no symptoms yet. Echinacea astragalus, again, more like season's coming and I want to be prepared. So oregano oil will take when you're acute. So it's a good thing to travel with. If you're on a long trip, especially if you're going overseas or to countries that have different kind of viruses and bacteria around, you're going to China, you're going to Africa, you're going to third world countries that have a less hygienic environment, you want to bring it with you. Third world countries, even when there's problems with bad water, the water's not clean, you can take oregano oil and it will kill even parasites. So there are times with oregano that if you're spending some time in third world countries where you don't want to wait because it's so acute there, but that's a time where you can take oregano every day because you're in China, you're in Africa, you're in South America. And taking one a day, I've done that in Central America and on certain trips where I was with big groups of people. I was the only one taking oregano oil. I was the only one who didn't get have parasitic issues. And I've seen that over and over again with people who go out and are traveling in groups who are taking oregano oil in those third world countries and places where the acuteness is intense, and it works. And there's a lot of respiratory conditions, and people see that visit, China and other areas around the Pacific Rim, that they take oregano and they don't wait because it comes on so fast. So but mainly oregano oil is good because you have active infection. You're fighting things off in your lungs, throat, sinuses. You need antibiotics. Think of that's oregano oil time. And usually when you're acute, you're not taking things once a day to kind of generally go after it. You're taking things 2-3 times a day easily, sometimes even more, sometimes maybe every 3 hours because you're so uncomfortable. And you gotta go after it. You gotta hit it up and increase your dosages. So oregano is strong. So 1 cap is equal to that's 4 or 5 drops of what's in the dropper bottle. And to take it on a repeated basis. So think of oregano as a broad spectrum antimicrobial. It kills stuff, but when you take it, it's absorbed before it goes into your large intestine. So it's not killing the good bacteria in your large intestine. People ask that all the time. It's absorbed. It doesn't end up in there as a raw material. And that's where the good bacteria live. It's not the small intestine or stomach, it's the large intestine. So it's safe for that application. It's safe for children. Normally, I don't give herbs to kids under the age of 1. And if you're giving it to children, everything, you read the dosages on labels. If you're giving things to children, you dose down by weight, not age. So you think of an average dose, maybe 150-pound adult. If you have a 75-pound kid, you give them half and you do the math. If you're a much larger person and you're 200 plus pounds, you may have to give more than what's on the label because you're dealing with more body mass, and that would be normal. So going back to that I'm acute and sick phase, oregano oil is fantastic. You know, it's the #1 selling immune SKU that we've seen, especially through COVID. But even before COVID, it was the top selling immune SKU for acute usages. And it's been repeatedly successful and people take it over time because it's worked for them. Let's talk about a couple others, and I'm sure I'll circle back into, contextualizing someone's already talked about. But golden seal, rock and roll star. Golden seal, when you take it, is only indicated when you're acute. And not only that, but usually more when you have fever and more on the respiratory side, you're coughing up thick mucus, it might be discolored, maybe a sinus infection, it's really impacted, and you have post-sinus drip and it's discolored. Golden seal will attack that infection because it's excreted through the mucosal layers of your respiratory tract. That's where it works its way out. So it's really effective there. Normally you take it for about 2 weeks at the most. If it hasn't turned it around by then, it's probably not going to work. If it turns things around, you just have loose, runny, clear mucus. That's not golden seal time anymore. Then you need decongestants. So golden seal will take hot, discolored, thick mucus and bring it to a point where it's clear that you can expectorate and be done. So it's a real limited use. Golden seal has been over harvested in the wild, so we don't want to be using wild harvested golden seal anymore. So we use certified organic cultivated golden seal to leave the stands that are left in the wild alone, because they need time to repopulate because they've been over harvested for 100 years. It's not just the current supplement world that's using the wild stuff. It goes way back because it's been a rock and roll star for a long time. So we only use farmed organic golden seal right now. And that's where its limited use is. Since it is excreted through mucosal membranes, it's effective for infections in your respiratory tract, as well as your digestive tract and your urinary tract, because those are all mucosal layers. So if you have chronic UTIs and infections or GI infections, infections in the colon, it can be effective there as well, because it's also excreted there. So golden seal is great. It's because it has a couple compounds in it called hydrastin and berberine. And the hydrastin is not water soluble. Again, golden seal as a tea is not really effective. So you want it in a liquid extract or in capsule form, but not tea form. And golden seal, if you take a liquid of it, it should be really bitter. It's not a fun one. So that's a sign that it's potent stuff, As I like to say, people are taking liquids and they go, what's it going to taste like? Is it going to taste bad? Well, yeah, a lot of them taste bad. If you want something that tastes good, go get some ice cream. If you want to get better, you just take it. This is like, okay, it's medicine. If you don't like the taste, put it in a little bit of water, put it in a little bit of juice and take it. But if you are taking straight up Gold Seal and it tastes good, something's wrong. There's no actives in it. So just something to think about. Okay, moving on. We're sick. So sometimes you have to target where you're sick. So sinus infections. It could be a primary or secondary to something else. Could be secondary to allergies or just a respiratory tract issue that was down below. But sinuses don't have a lot of blood supply and they're closed off. It's hard to get in there. So we have a formula called Sinus Blaster. Sinus Blaster combines Golden Seal. It puts in some peppermint menthol. It has capsaicin in it. And it has wasabi in it, which is horseradish, special kind, and a bunch of other herbs, elderberry and some others. But why it works is it only works as a liquid, and we have it as a spray or drops. And when you take it, you close your mouth and you inhale. And if you've ever had the experience of having like too much wasabi with your sushi, what did it do? Phew, sinus missiles. It kind of blows them open. They start to drip. It's really intense, and then it's over, which can also happen with a big menthol dose. Menthol comes from peppermint. And so we take those to blast open your sinuses and put all these immune herbs with it. Golden Seal, elderberry, horehound, andrographis, garlic, and all this stuff. So that now that it's open, we can get some immune herbs in there to kind of do its thing. And so when you take Sinus Blaster, you just kind of close your mouth and inhale. And it pulls these vapors up into your sinuses, like aromatherapy inside the middle of your skull. And it just makes your sinuses drain right away. And so maybe you take that with oregano oil or with a Golden Seal dose. But that's a way to attack your sinuses right away and open those up. But let's say maybe the infection is more in your throat and it's more there. That is OSHA time. And that we put into our bronchial formula. We put it into a capsule called Congestes and a liquid called Respiries. So OSHA is the most effective plant for throat and lung bronchial infections. So OSHA is a plant that only grows in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, southern Colorado and northern New Mexico, San Juans, and that territory. And it's a root plant that grows at high elevation, not 9,000 feet, 10,000 feet. And we harvest it and extract it fresh. We have people go out and wild harvest our OSHA plants in special places that they have to hike out to. And we bring these plants in. And what OSHA root does is it stimulates another white blood cell that we didn't talk about. It's a type of white blood cell called a macrophage that only lives in your lungs and throat, your bronchioles and your lungs. And so there are white blood cells they don't move around. They just stay in certain tissues versus ones in your blood or your lymph. They're moving all over, fighting everywhere a little bit. But if you can target where, like if you have a urinary tract infection, you take uva ursi because it gets the immune cells going right there and goes wild right there. And that's why you do that. And then cranberry affects how they're sticky and their pH. And okay, we're in our throat and lungs. OSHA makes the white blood cells in your lungs and throat go wild. They start gobbling stuff up that shouldn't be there much faster. And they bronchodilate. They take your lungs and they bronchodilate and pulls more blood into the surface capillaries of your lungs. So it's bringing in all these white blood cells and all this immune fighting good stuff. It's bringing in hematocrits, which say, okay, let's dump oxygen and pull in a lot more oxygen. It dumps carbon dioxide and pulls in oxygen. So you oxygenate and you bronchodilate so you can breathe deeper, especially when you have a tight spastic cough because you're really congested. It pulls all this blood in there and it opens up your lungs, your intercostal muscles and your diaphragm. So you can take a deep breath and get all this immune stimulation, and it'll turn around throat infections and respiratory conditions in your lungs faster than oregano oil. Oregano oil works all over. Again, so OSHA works right there in your lungs. So we use it in formulations mostly. And so we put it in a syrup called a bronchial syrup. And in those other formulations, one called Congestes, which is a liquid cap, and a dropper formulation called Respirates, where it's the king and queen of fighting things right now. So anytime, like a first sign of a sore throat, first sign of the crud, right? Or you're hacking up a little bit and you're not feeling quite right, or you're feeling tight in your lungs. So there's a lot of symptoms that you're going down that we don't always acknowledge. And if you treat things right then and there, you're going to be way more successful. So OSHA is super important to be taking them. I tend to, like, when I start to break down, my throat goes. I'm flying out next week, tomorrow actually, to a conference. I'll be speaking for days. I'm flying to 3 different cities, staying in lots of hotels. I know for me, that's where I break down and get sick. So I take OSHA during those trips every day, and I stay on top of it. And I take my ImmunoWell RX, my Echinacea Strix, I take that every day. And I get on top of that. Personally, I haven't had, knock on wood, I haven't had a cold or flu in decades. Anything, not just COVID, you know, for me, I know how to watch it. I hit it up, I treat it. I don't get what's ever going around. And that's, you know, me. Before that, I used to. So it's all about us learning about how we break down and what we need to do. If you're the first person to say, you know, God, first sign of things, I get these sinus infections, I'd be packing a sinus blaster and taking it the very first signs. Just like, don't wait. If you're a singer, I work with a bunch of Broadway performers, and they work in cold, damp theaters on Broadway. And I made an OSHA-based spray that's like the sinus blaster, and you know, you just take it right away, and people tend not to get sick. So it's something that's really good. You know, people who sing a lot, they're just really stressing their vocal cords. People who lecture and talk a lot, teachers around kids that are just, you know, you're in the petri dish of bacteria. That would be helpful. So OSHA kind of crossovers for, like, let me take it so I don't get sick. Let me take a lot more when I am sick. Let me stay on alert. And that's OSHA. And it's a root plant that is very unusual, not common. Not many companies have it. It grows where I live. So we have very special people that go harvest this for us seasonally, and we extract the roots. And nothing works as well as that for respiratory crud. And so I just want to, you know, mention OSHA in that way. Another herb I'd be remiss not to talk about would be elderberry. Elderberry was a rock star throughout COVID. It's been a rock star for a long time. And, you know, everyone now talks about protein spikes because we heard it on the news. That's what COVID is. They get these protein spikes, and, you know, you got to neutralize them, which the vaccines did, so that they wouldn't multiply and go into horrible states. Well, I've been lecturing about elderberry for decades. Elderberry works by affecting protein spikes on viruses. We've known that type of hematogluten and certain types of protein spikes. So elderberry is good in the preventative and the acute phase. So it can be both. So elderberry, more so historically, was like, oh, I'm sick, I'm going to take elderberry to turn things around right now. And elderberry is pretty safe in giving it up in teas. We make syrups, like Sambuca syrup is the best way to take it. We make capsules with elderberry. But, you know, it's the kind of thing you want to have around before you need it, because you know, your things are starting to happen. That's something to think about. What should I have around beforehand? Because I don't want to wait a day or till the next morning and day to go get stuff on the acute phase. So maybe you say, I'm going to keep oregano oil around. I'm going to keep sinus blaster. I'm going to keep Sambucus. Sambucus is the Latin name for elderberry. It's not that sexy. Sambucus nigra is its full name. So we call it Sambucus syrup. because it sounds cooler than elderberry, but it's all the same thing. And so elderberry will help shorten the durations by getting to those protein spikes and diminishing viral activity. That's how it works. You got to take good doses. A dose of our elderberry, half a teaspoon, it's 6,400 milligrams of elderberry. So we have these gigantic cooking vessels with pressurized steam where we take the elderberries and extract them in water and concentrate, like do a reduction phase. You get a thick berry tasting kind of syrup that works well. What I'm going to say some people don't like, but gummies have gotten to be very popular. The problem with gummies is, how do you get a therapeutic dose in something that tastes like candy? Read labels. They're not bad. They're just the dosages on them tend not to be very high because there's so much goes into making them. It's a gummy. It's candy with a little bit of medicine in it. On the herbal side, you can't really, it's hard to get, you'd have to eat a lot of them. So I get it. You got kids, you want them to take them, and you get in what you can get in them. Okay, big gun time. Sambuca syrup is 6,400 milligrams of elderberry in half a teaspoon. It's not very expensive. That's where you get your big dose. So something to think about for viruses. Colds and flus are viral. Also remember on that note that colds and flus are viruses. What do antibiotics kill? Bacteria. They don't touch viruses. It's strange. Taking antibiotics for a cold or flu is odd unless you're moving into secondary infections or a fear of secondary infections because you're so immune deficient. But, I don't know why everyone's taking antibiotics for colds and flus when they don't treat viruses. So just something, and then they're immunosuppressive in the long term where your body can't fight itself well over time. Work with your doctor, take what you need to take. I'm not saying don't take them, but I'm just giving you information when you're talking to a doctor. Why are you prescribing antibiotics if my virus is what's causing my cold and flu? Because antibiotics will also kill the good bacteria. You got GI issues as a secondary issue now. So it's just something to really think about in working with that. But so we use elderberry, there's some of that in Sinus Blaster. We put it in all kinds of other products. It's in a little bit in bronchial syrup, but Sambuca syrup is the big guns where you get a much larger dose to treat your immune system. So I want to make sure as I'm talking about this, that again, let me back up and, if you have a question or something, I'm happy to entertain a question. But I want to separate out maybe, immunity isn't that interesting anymore because you've learned, but you got to break out. What do I take to prevent? What do I take when I'm acute? To prevent, you take something once a day and you go on your merry way. When you're acute and you're fighting something off 3 times a day, 2 at a minimum. If you're in bed and you're just, death warmed over, so to speak, every 3 hours for a day or 2, and you really go for it, because you want to turn it around now and support what your body's trying to do. By the way, producing mucus is what your lungs do to expectorate and get something out. So you don't want to dry up mucus. You want to make it wetter, if anything. You want to really flush things out. Don't take decongestants. Take things that make you wetter. So our Remedies formula that has OSHA in it has herbs in it like yerba santa that make your lungs flick out the mucus. It has herbs in it that relax your lungs like lobelia so you can expectorate better. It has herbs like licorice root. It takes water in your body and moves it into your lungs to thin out that thick mucus. So I'm just trying, the goal is, how does your body heal and how do I just support it? Let me support what your body's trying to do because it's so much smarter than us. That's kind of weird because your body is you. But, I want to support what the body's trying to do innately. So that's what the Remedies formula and the bronchial formula is trying to do. It's just trying to really thin that out, relax, the muscles, relax your diaphragm, ease the cough and resolve it. And, that's what the body is trying to do. And so maybe you got to take it every 3 hours when you're just really uncomfortable and really congested, and turn it around faster. So I see a question.
Yes. We have a question. When is a good time to use Mullein?
Yeah, Mullein. So Mullein has become wildly more popular in the past year. Mullein is interesting, and Mullein is in our Remedies formula, and we have it as a single. So what Mullein is good, it's good for cough and expectorating. It doesn't fight infection. It doesn't do that. So Mullein is really good for pain, and that's, see, I like to talk about, a lot of people talk about what herbs are for. I like to talk about what do they do. So for instance, we know mullein flower, we put in ear oils because it helps for ear pain. It's the flower part for ears. So you have ear oil, and it has other plants in it that are good for ear infections. But in lung formulations, it anesthetizes some of the pain in your lungs, so it's easier to cough and expectorate. But what it doesn't do is bring water into your lungs like licorice does. It doesn't excite the cilia of your lungs to move it out. That's what yerba santa does. It doesn't excite the immune cells in your lungs. That's what OSHA does, and lomatium that we put in there. So it's a partner of what we're trying to do. So it helps make, when you're congested, it makes it more productive, but only through that one mechanism. And it's the leaf. We use mullein leaf in that way. So that's what it's for. And you take it when you want to get rid of some mucus. I mean, if I'm out camping, you can take mullein leaf and dry it and smoke it, and you'll spit more. You'll expectorate more. And that's an old traditional use, Native American use, and backwoods folk use of mullein that helps you to expectorate. So maybe you're congested for various reasons in your lungs, not sinuses, lungs and throat. So that's where you use mullein. It's a good question. Yeah. So, yeah, good. So we want to support the body and not take it over. So, taking antibiotics, when you need antibiotics, but it tells your immune system to stop working. That drug works, kills all the good guys, and then you're left more depleted afterwards and more susceptible to getting sick again because your immune system doesn't know what to do. Taking these herbs kind of retrains your system, because we're treating the whole system dysfunction so that it works better. So, you get through some seasons and your body works a little bit better, whether you did preventatively, you're better, or you're acute and you took some herbs and you resolved it better. I'm telling you, the next season that rolls around, your body's going to be more robust, that maybe you don't need anything. Like, the goal of supplements is to not need to take them because your body's working so great. How's that for a radical new concept? I'm getting it together. Obviously, we're trying to get our sleep, trying to eat well, exercising to sweat. Boy, is that a great immune stimulator. Amazing. So, people around me are getting sick now. I'm hitting it harder every morning, making sure for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning, I'm doing aerobic stuff just to drip sweat. And I think of that as, that's stronger than echinacea. That's stronger than astragalus in terms of what your white blood cells do. You produce more and they become more active and they clean you up. And fever, by the way, that was what I was going to say. A fever, when your body raises temperature, it makes your immune system and your white blood cells go nuts. So it fights things off much more so. So you never want to just take things to make your fever go away. If it's too high, you bring it down with aspirin. If if it's so uncomfortable, you want to control it, fine. But remember, fever is the cure. It's what your immune system does to activate and produce immune attack. And so we want to control it. If it's uncomfortable, if you're okay with it, just let it ride. And it self-resolves. And then you'll be stronger the next time you're around those buggers, to where maybe it doesn't have to really happen so intensely. So you can modulate temperature when you're uncomfortable, but let it ride. Let it ride. It's okay. If it's a child, you don't want to go into febrile seizures because you're 104, 105 and it's going unchecked. You got to be drinking lots of water, cold compresses here, back of the neck. It'll help bring it down. and take your herbs. So I hope, kind of talking about this in maybe a slightly different way than maybe you've heard before is going to be helpful on knowing what to take, when to take it, and how much to take, and in what form. And just kind of give you a little bit more information. If something made you think of yourself or someone you go, oh, that made me think of someone. That was my intent. Or, me in a certain situation at certain times and trying to describe who would use it and when. That's enough information to try to start trying things and, take it another step. So appreciate the support. These things, they work. They've been working for a very long time. The things that worked for the last 100 years still work. We're not all sitting around waiting for something no one's ever figured out to do that will take the place of these things. We kind of know what's worked well for a long period of time. So what's new is not necessarily better. It's rarely the case. These time-honored friends of ours we know when not to take them, and there's a contraindication, we're putting it on the label. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful, good timing, just to help get ready for this season that's rapidly coming and take care of yourself. So thank you for the time. And let's see if you have any other thoughts or questions, Elizabeth.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mitch. Terry said, great info. Thank you, Mitch. And
Good.
let me see here in the live stream. Looks like there's no comment, but we are more than welcome to open it up here in the Zoom meeting. It might spark some other questions. I also love to do the traditional medicinal throat coat tea.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That one's really good, but I'm really intrigued with the products that you were mentioning because as you could tell, I lost my voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, the traditional medicinals does a great job. I know those folks. They're great at what they do, but you can even take some of these liquids and put them in a little hot water and drink them too. Traditional medicinals focuses more on adding things that make them taste good. We just focus on all the stuff that cures you, or turns things around and helps your body functionality. But by all means, you can always put some of these in a little bit of hot water and add honey, add flavorings, add juice, add things. You can put them in a little bit of juice anyways and back them back. And look at the label. How many milligrams are there in the dose? And so these things are available in the Marlene's label, in the store, because that's what we partner up and, do a great job, and staff is knowledgeable, and try them.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Cool.
I had a question about with there's different elements of herbs. So like the leaves have a different chemical constituent or properties versus like the roots. What is your favorite herb?
Well, yeah, and we use the parts of the plant that's appropriate for what our intended use. Like I mentioned, like mullein, we use the flower and make it into an oil for ear infections. We use the leaf for lung and throat conditions because we know that kind of stuff. So, like ashwagandha, we only use the root. We don't use the parts above ground because it's a waste of space. Turmeric should only be the root, not the whole plant. Some companies are marketing turmeric whole plant now, and that's a bad idea. It's only the root. So, my favorite herb is actually Osha, which we talked about today, because it's been heroically effective for myself. It's so profoundly effective, and so many people need it. So, I'm a huge proponent of it, but, a lot of it is going to be person to person specific. Somebody has a chronic liver issue with that elevated liver enzymes, their favorite might be milk thistle because it brings down their liver enzymes, keeps them in a good place forever. Somebody else might be a bitter herb because they don't need to take digestive enzymes anymore because they're taking their gentian and their digestive formulation. And, it's helping create a tonic homeostasis for them that keeps them always in a good place. So a lot of it is constitutionally based, what's wrong, what do you need that keeps you in a good way all the time that you're going to take forever. Some people it's going to be turmeric because they're inflamed and they're anti-inflammatory. So you take turmeric and their joints don't hurt, their eczema doesn't flare, their psoriasis doesn't flare, their asthma doesn't flare, and it works for them. So, my favorite herbs are the herbs that work, but then it's specific to each person. So for me, it's Osha because I talk too much, and my throat wears down. And so I put it in all these different forms, and it grows in my backyard so I can go see it, where I live, metaphorically speaking, in northern New Mexico in the high mountains. And it's just spectacular. I also am a big fan of arnica. It's amazing when you have the real material. And so I just came back a couple weeks ago to the high mountain. I was in the high Alps chasing arnica where it grows at 12,000 feet or 10,000, 12,000 feet in the Swiss Alps chasing arnica. So, it's fun to think about those kinds of things and go spend time with them in their native habitat and watch how medicinally effective they can be for people when they get them the correct herb in the correct format and use it for the correct condition. So, there's a couple personal favorites.
Lovely. No, thank you.
Yeah.
It's like what you were saying, everybody is different. So the plant medicine that calls to them is helps them with what they're trying to bring back to homeostasis.
Yeah.
How do you spell OSHA?
OSHA.
Oh, S-H-A. Oh, there it is. I think this became one of my new favorite herbs.
Yeah. It's a really, and even I've used it also athletically induced asthma, people that need more oxygen uptake. We can't use ephedra anymore as a bronchodilator. It's off the market. So what do we
Really?
use that? So think of asthma, bronchitis. It helps to really open up the lungs, not in a, oh my God, I'm going to die because I need my albuterol way, but it opens it up a lot more. So just think of people closed off heart space, closed off congestive. It really opens up the chest, chemically and through the compounds in it. And it's just a wonderful plant. And so with the people that we work with, same family for 25 years, they harvest the Osha, they bring it to us the next day, and we're extracting it fresh before it even dries, like fresh produce. And they harvest enough to last the rest of the year, and they bring it in over a few weeks, in the fall. And, it's a really special situation and the best version of that plant. And I think we use more of it than almost anybody in the country. It works. So, yeah.
Well, I am a new fan. I can't wait to the next time I work in the store, pick up some of those wonderful our our label, which is made by y'all. And I think it's really great that you're able to go to these farms, go all around the world and connect the farmers, connect with the plants, connect with the earth, because it's that energetic understanding, and then that is felt when our customers buy it.
Yeah, it all matters. Just working with great people, paying them enough to know it's worth their while, keeps it sustainable, big word in the industry, means lots of things to me. And so I want to make it sustainable for people to keep go getting them, not over harvest, cultivate the ones we need to leave alone. Everyone needs to make a living, so we take care of them, not get them in powder form, because then there could be other things in it you can't see. So we're really trying to do the right thing. And, this is our 41st year making these medicines. So you develop these relationships with great people on every continent. So we're very fortunate to, have the clinical background, the supply side down, the understanding how to use them, and make these for folks in a way that's still cost effective. So add value that way. So yeah, it's a blessing to be able to do this.
Well, thank you so much for being an inspiration in the health and wellness industry. And yeah, 41 years. That's that's a true testament, to um, all like you being so dedicated
Yeah.
and loving
Yeah.
what you do.
Thanks. Yeah, we're a group here now. There's 312 of us as of today, cranking out herbal stuff every day and processing just to take care of everybody who wants it. It's working. So it's a real testament. And yeah, it's great. It's great. I think I'm already doing what I want to do when I grow up.
Oh, yay! That's beautiful.
Yeah, so fortunate. Yeah, yeah,
Well, we are very fortunate to have this opportunity um, to pick your brain and for you to share um, the information you shared tonight is invaluable. And for those of you watching on Facebook, um, the video is available on Facebook. It will be available on our YouTube channel. So that'll be later. But Mitch, I am very grateful. I can't wait to work with you more. We'll get you in the store, which will be fantastic.
great, great. No, thanks for the time. Thanks for the support too. Takes a village, everybody. Your listeners, everybody all together. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate the time.
Of course. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Um, definitely stay tuned for more and take good care.
Okay, thanks. Take care.